Normandy, June 6, 1944. American soldiers wade ashore at Omaha Beach. They're cold, seasick, weighed down with equipment. Then they hear it. A sound unlike anything they've experienced in training. Not the bang, bang, bang of rifle fire or the rhythmic chug of American machine guns. This is different. A tearing, ripping sound, like cloth being torn apart at incredible speed. Brrr, brrr, brrr. The sound is continuous, impossibly fast, terrifying. Men fall in waves. The water turns red. Bodies float in the surf. Veterans who survived would later say it sounded like a BUZZSAW, or like ripping canvas, or like the devil's own laughter. The weapon creating this hell was the MG42, the German general-purpose machine gun that fired faster than any other machine gun in the world. At 1,200 rounds per minute, it was twice as fast as American machine guns. The human ear couldn't distinguish individual shots. It just heard one continuous, deadly roar. This is the story of the MG42, perhaps the finest machine gun ever designed. It's a story of German engineering at its peak, creating a weapon so effective that its basic design remains in service today, over 80 years later. It's about innovation born from desperate need, as Germany sought weapons that could multiply the effectiveness of dwindling manpower. Most importantly, it's about a weapon that terrorized Allied soldiers and changed machine gun design forever. The evolution from MG34. To understand the MG42, we must first understand its predecessor, the MG34. In the early 1930s, Germany developed the MG34 as the world's first true general-purpose machine gun. Previous machine guns were specialized, heavy weapons for sustained fire or light weapons for mobile operations. The MG34 could do both. With a bipod, it served as a squad automatic weapon. On a tripod, it became a heavy machine gun. The same weapon fulfilled multiple roles. The MG34 was magnificent, beautifully machined, accurate, reliable, with an excellent rate of fire of 800 to 900 rounds per minute. It used a unique rotating bolt mechanism that was smooth and reliable. German infantry loved it. However, the MG34 had a critical flaw. It was too expensive and time-consuming to manufacture. Each gun required extensive machining, skilled labor, and expensive materials. As Germany prepared for war, military planners realized they couldn't produce MG34s in the quantities needed. In 1937, the German Army issued specifications for a new machine gun. It had to match the performance of the MG34, but be cheaper, faster to produce, and use materials that wouldn't strain war production. The design had to accommodate mass production using stamping, welding, and simplified manufacturing processes rather than precision machining. Multiple companies submitted designs. The contract went to Metall- und Lackierwarenfabrik Johannes Grossfuss, a metalworking company that had never manufactured firearms. Their chief designer was Dr. Werner Gruner, an engineer who understood both weapons design and mass production manufacturing. Gruner's team created a revolutionary design that would change machine gun development forever. Revolutionary design features. The MG42 was a masterpiece of simplified manufacturing combined with enhanced performance. Dr. Gruner's team made several inspired choices that created a superior weapon while drastically reducing production cost and time. First, the receiver was made from heavy-gauge sheet metal stampings welded together. This was revolutionary. Traditional machine gun receivers were machined from solid steel billets, requiring hours of expensive machining. The MG42's stamped and welded receiver could be produced in a fraction of the time at a fraction of the cost. It was also lighter than a machined receiver. Second, the bolt mechanism was redesigned for simplicity and speed. The MG42 used a roller-locked bolt mechanism where two rollers in the bolt locked into recesses in the barrel extension. When fired, gas pressure forced the rollers outward, locking the bolt. After the bullet left the barrel and pressure dropped, the rollers were cammed inward, unlocking the bolt. This mechanism was fast, reliable, and required relatively little precision machining. The third, the rate of fire was dramatically increased. The MG34 fired at 800 to 900 rounds per minute. The MG42 fired at 1,200 rounds per minute, with some versions reaching 1,500 RPM. This incredible rate of fire was achieved through the efficient bolt design and careful balancing of the recoil spring tension. The high rate of fire had both advantages and disadvantages, which we'll explore. Fourth, the barrel change system was ingenious. Machine guns generate tremendous heat. Sustained fire will melt a barrel. The MG34 required tools and time to change barrels. The MG42's barrel could be changed in seconds without tools. The gunner simply lifted a latch, swung the receiver cover open, pulled the hot barrel out, dropped a cool barrel in, closed the cover, and resumed firing. A trained crew could change barrels in under 5 seconds. The fifth, the feed mechanism was redesigned for reliability. The MG42 used metallic link belts rather than fabric belts. Metal links were more reliable, didn't absorb moisture, and didn't wear out. The feed mechanism itself was simplified and extremely reliable, functioning even when dirty, wet, or fouled with carbon. The complete weapon weighed about 25 pounds, similar to the MG34. It fired the standard 7.92 by 57 millimeter Mauser cartridge. It could be fed from the left or right side, important for different mounting positions. It had simple but effective iron sights. Accessories included bipods for light roll, heavy tripods for sustained fire roll, drum magazines for anti-aircraft use, and optical sights for long-range precision fire.
Manufacturing triumph. The MG42 achieved its design goal spectacularly. Manufacturing time dropped from 150 hours for an MG34 to about 75 hours for an MG42. Cost dropped proportionally. More importantly, the MG42 could be manufactured in factories with less sophisticated equipment and less skilled labor. As Germany mobilized for total war, these advantages proved crucial. Multiple factories produced MG42s. Mauser, Gustloff Werke, Steyr, and others manufactured components that could be assembled at various locations. Production ramped up quickly. By 1942, MG42 production exceeded MG34 production. By 1943, the MG42 was standard issue for German infantry. Production continued until the war's final days, with approximately 414,000 MG42s manufactured during the war. The weapon's reliability in combat was exceptional. It functioned in the Russian winter at -40 degrees. It functioned in the North African desert with sand and dust. It functioned in the mud of Italy and France. It functioned when neglected, when dirty, when damaged. German soldiers could depend on the MG42 absolutely. Tactical doctrine and employment. German infantry tactics centered on the machine gun. Unlike American or British doctrine, where the rifle squad was the basic unit with the machine gun providing support, German doctrine made the machine gun the central weapon. The rifle squad was built around the MG42. The rifleman's primary job was to protect the machine gun, carry ammunition for it, and provide security for the gun crew. A German infantry squad of 10 men included a 3-man machine gun crew and 7 riflemen. The machine gun crew consisted of the gunner, assistant gunner, and ammunition bearer. The assistant gunner carried spare barrels and helped with barrel changes. The ammunition bearer carried additional ammunition belts. The rifleman carried rifle ammunition, but also extra machine gun ammunition. In defense, the MG42 was positioned to cover the most likely enemy approach. German defensive positions were sighted based on machine gun fields of fire. Everything else supported the machine guns. In attack, the machine guns provided covering fire, while riflemen advanced. Once the riflemen secured new positions, the machine guns moved forward and the process repeated. The incredible rate of fire created both advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was devastating effect. The wall of bullets from an MG42 was psychologically and physically overwhelming.
Allied soldiers reported that the sound alone was demoralizing. The high rate of fire meant that even brief bursts put large numbers of rounds on target. This increased hit probability against moving targets. The disadvantage was ammunition consumption. At 1,200 rounds per minute, an MG42 consumed ammunition at a prodigious rate. A 5-second burst fired 100 rounds. Sustained fire could exhaust ammunition supplies quickly. German doctrine emphasized fire discipline. Short, controlled bursts rather than continuous fire. A trained gunner learned to fire bursts of specific lengths, 3 to 5 rounds for single targets, longer bursts for groups or area suppression. The barrel change requirement was both strength and weakness. The ability to change barrels quickly allowed sustained fire operations. However, it meant crews needed multiple spare barrels and had to execute changes under fire. A well-trained crew made this look easy. Under stress, with casualties, barrel changes became more difficult. The Eastern Front, the meat grinder. On the Eastern Front, the MG42 proved invaluable. Soviet tactics often emphasized mass infantry assaults. Waves of Soviet soldiers would attack German positions. The MG42's high rate of fire and reliability allowed small German units to inflict horrific casualties on attacking Soviets. German defensive positions on the Eastern Front were often undermanned. The MG42 multiplied defensive effectiveness. One MG42 crew could cover a front that would normally require a platoon. The weapon's long range allowed engagement of targets at 1,000 yards or more when mounted on a tripod with optical sights. Its accuracy in sustained fire mode was excellent. Soviet soldiers learned to fear the German machine guns. Soviet veterans report that hearing the distinctive sound of MG42 fire caused involuntary fear responses. Units would hesitate or refuse to advance when MG42s opened fire. Soviet tactics adapted, emphasizing suppressive artillery fire and smoke to blind the German gunners before infantry advanced. The MG42 also proved effective in offensive operations. German infantry attacks led by experienced assault troops using MG42s for covering fire were extremely effective. The combination of high firepower and tactical flexibility made German infantry formations dangerous even when outnumbered. The Western Front, D-Day and beyond. The MG42's most famous combat occurred on D-Day and the subsequent Normandy campaign. At Omaha Beach, MG42s positioned in bunkers and fortifications created a killing zone that came close to defeating the American landing. The combination of overlapping fields of fire, prepared positions, and the MG42's firepower made Omaha Beach the bloodiest of the D-Day landings. American soldiers advancing from the beaches encountered MG42s in every hedgerow, every village, every defensive position. The weapon's sound became synonymous with German resistance. American infantry learned to detect MG42 positions by sound, call in artillery or tank support, and use grenades and flanking maneuvers to eliminate the guns. In urban combat in French and German cities, the MG42 excelled. Positioned in buildings with good fields of fire, it could dominate streets and approaches. Allied forces learned to use overwhelming firepower, tanks, artillery, and air support to suppress MG42 positions before infantry advanced. The Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 saw intensive MG42 use as German forces attempted their last major offensive. The weapon's reliability in freezing conditions and heavy snow was remarkable. It continued functioning when other weapons failed. Allied respect and fear. Allied soldiers had complex feelings about the MG42. They feared it, respected it, and desperately wanted to capture it. Units that captured MG42s often kept them for their own use despite ammunition supply complications. American and British troops using captured MG42s reported being amazed by its effectiveness. Allied weapons development was influenced by the MG42. American ordnance officers studied captured MG42s extensively. Post-war American machine guns incorporated lessons learned from the MG42. The M60 machine gun,
adopted by the U.S. in 1957, used a modified version of the MG42's feed mechanism and showed clear design influence. British forces were equally impressed. After the war, Britain adopted the FN MAG as the L7 general-purpose machine gun, a design heavily influenced by studying the MG42's concept and execution. Soviet designers studied captured MG42s but took different lessons. Soviet machine guns emphasized reliability and simplicity over rate of fire. However, Soviet respect for the MG42 was evident in captured documents and post-war analysis. Technical analysis. Why it was so good. What made the MG42 so effective? Several factors combined to create an exceptional weapon. The high rate of fire increased hit probability. At 1200 RPM, even brief bursts put enough rounds in the air that one would likely hit a moving target. The burst was effectively a shotgun pattern of bullets. The reliability was legendary. The MG42 functioned in conditions that disabled other weapons. The simple design, generous tolerances, and quality materials meant the weapon kept working through abuse, neglect, and battle damage. The quick-change barrel system allowed sustained fire operations. A crew with spare barrels could maintain fire almost continuously by changing barrels every 100 to 150 rounds. This sustained fire capability was crucial in defensive operations. The feed was extremely reliable. The metallic link belts worked better than fabric belts in wet, muddy, or dusty conditions. The feed mechanism rarely jammed even when the weapon was dirty. The accuracy was excellent. From a tripod with optical sights, the MG42 could engage individual targets at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards. The weapon's mechanical precision, combined with the 7.92mm Mauser cartridge's ballistics, made it effective at ranges where most soldiers couldn't return accurate fire. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. The sound of an MG42 firing affected Allied soldiers' morale and combat effectiveness. Fear of the weapon led to hesitation, which gave German defenders tactical advantages. Post-war legacy, the MG3. The MG42's story didn't end in 1945. West Germany, rearming in the 1950s as part of NATO, needed machine guns. The MG42 design was so good that they simply updated it. The MG3, adopted in 1959, was essentially an MG42 rechambered for the NATO standard 7.62 by 51mm cartridge. The MG3 remains in service today with numerous militaries worldwide. Over 70 years after the original MG42's introduction, the basic design continues to prove its worth. Turkey, Pakistan, Spain, and many other nations manufacture MG3 variants or use surplus German weapons. The design has been adapted and modified. Some versions have reduced rates of fire for better ammunition economy. Others have enhanced mounting systems, but the core design, the stamped receiver, the roller-locked bolt, the quick-change barrel, remains essentially unchanged from Dr. Gruner's 1942 design. This longevity is remarkable. Very few weapons remain in frontline service after 80 years. The MG3's continued use testifies to the fundamental excellence of the MG42 design.
Comparing to contemporary machine guns, how does the MG42 compare to Allied machine guns of World War II? The American M1919 Browning fired at about 400 to 600 RPM, half the MG42's rate. It was reliable and accurate, but slower firing and heavier. The M1919 was belt-fed like the MG42, but used fabric belts that were less reliable. Barrel changes required tools and time. American soldiers who captured and used MG42s universally preferred it to the M1919. The British Bren gun fired only 500 to 520 RPM and fed from 30-round magazines, limiting sustained fire capability. It was accurate and reliable, but didn't have the MG42's overwhelming firepower. The Bren was a squat automatic weapon rather than a true general-purpose machine gun.
The Soviet DP-28 was simple and reliable, but fired only 500 to 600 RPM from 47-round Pan magazines. It lacked the MG42's versatility and sustained fire capability. Soviet machine gun doctrine emphasized numbers over sophistication, but captured MG42s were prized by Soviet soldiers. The MG42 was superior to every Allied machine gun in rate of fire, ease of manufacture, reliability, and versatility. Only in ammunition consumption was it arguably inferior, and even this was manageable with proper fire discipline. The human element, gunners and crews. Operating an MG42 required skill, strength, and courage. The gunner had to master the weapon's characteristics, learning to fire controlled bursts despite the incredible rate of fire. Overheated barrels had to be changed quickly under fire. Ammunition had to be managed carefully. Jams, though rare, had to be cleared immediately. The assistant gunner's role was crucial, carrying spare barrels, helping with barrel changes, feeding ammunition, and taking over if the gunner became a casualty required training and discipline. Many assistant gunners were killed performing their duties. The psychological burden was significant. MG42 gunners knew they were priority targets. Allied soldiers would focus fire on machine gun positions. Snipers hunted machine gunners. Artillery targeted them. Being an MG42 gunner was one of the most dangerous jobs in the German army. Yet the weapon inspired confidence. German veterans report feeling powerful behind an MG42. The incredible firepower gave them control over the battlefield. A well-positioned MG42 could dominate tactical situations. This confidence helped them endure the danger. Production until the end. MG42 production continued until Germany's collapse in May 1945. Factories kept manufacturing guns even as Allied armies closed in. Some of the last weapons produced showed declining quality, with rougher finishes and expedient substitutions of materials. But even these late-war weapons functioned adequately. The German determination to keep producing MG42s reflected the weapon's importance. In a war where Germany was increasingly outmatched in numbers, the MG42's ability to multiply defensive effectiveness was crucial. A well-positioned MG42 could stop attacks by forces many times larger than the defending unit. In the final battles, defending Berlin, fighting in the rubble of German cities, holding hopeless positions, German soldiers continued firing MG42s until they ran out of ammunition or were overrun. The weapon served faithfully until the bitter end. Conclusion. The MG42 represents German engineering and manufacturing excellence applied to create a weapon of devastating effectiveness. It was designed during war, for war, with an understanding that industrial efficiency was as important as battlefield performance. It succeeded brilliantly at both. Over 414,000 were manufactured during World War II. They served on every front. They killed countless Allied soldiers. They held back offensives. They multiplied the effectiveness of outnumbered German forces. The sound of their firing became one of the most distinctive and feared sounds of World War II. For Allied soldiers, the MG42 was Hitler's BUZZSAW, a weapon that dominated battlefields and had to be overcome through courage, combined arms tactics, and sheer determination. For German soldiers, it was a reliable friend, a weapon they could depend on absolutely, that gave them fighting power far beyond their numbers. The weapon's legacy extends far beyond World War II. Modern machine guns worldwide show the MG42's influence. The concept of the quick-change barrel, the stamped receiver, the general-purpose machine gun itself all owe debts to Dr. Gruner's design. The MG42 was a weapon born from necessity, designed brilliantly, manufactured efficiently, and employed effectively. It represents both the best of German military engineering and the terrible effectiveness of well-designed weapons in war. Its story is one of technical excellence, tactical impact,
and lasting influence. The BUZZSAW that terrorized Allied soldiers became one of history's most successful and influential machine guns.